Outer Orange.
Oh my god, it's ban list time! Oh, here we are. It is another quarterly. It is that time of the year. It is that time for everyone to go, this needs to get banned, and that needs to get banned. It's time for me, the content creator, to be like, hey, what's up? I got opinions. I haven't done a video in this structure in a while, so I hope you guys are enjoying seeing my beautiful face. I want to be here today to discuss to you guys personally like my thoughts on the current state of every format in Vanguard, and sort of just kind of get down to the nitty-gritty of what I would love to see hit, or what I would love to see change, or maybe things that shouldn't be hit, or kind of just whatever it is. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Oh my god, let's do it. So let's go ahead and start with Premium. There's obviously a outlier, and that's mainly Narukami, and then after that it's actually Bermuda Triangle and Steam Maidens. So if the top three decks that have been showing results have been those three, and then it's kind of everything else after that. DP has been popping up, a couple other decks here and there, and you know, we just got a little small stuff of spikes and all this kind of stuff. So the question is, should something change in this format? Should there be a change right now? And my honest response is, currently right now I actually don't think anything needs to be hit. There is, you know, discussions about potentially Narukami, don't disagree, but I think actually going into Worlds, because Worlds is coming up, my guys, Worlds is happening in like a month and a half or so, you know, it's at the end of January, it's kind of coming up, and I feel like Premium is the hardest to test for, and I feel like Premium in some cases isn't fully solved yet, and it's kind of still developing, because Premium just had a Mystery Flare hit, along with the, you know, the Thavas hit, so they already just kind of went through like a pretty aggressive change back in October times, right? So it'd be kind of weird to hit something again, and have them to go through like another like set of like a meta shift, and like I said, the meta is just forming right now, and I think it can continue to form. However, I haven't been playing Premium nearly as much recently, so if Narukami is really that oppressive, then maybe something's changed there. I don't really think so. Even Grand Blue has been topping more and all that kind of stuff. I feel like people have been finding ways around Narukami some more. People have been playing into Narukami more, maybe figuring it out. As someone who tested Narukami kind of recently, like 2 weeks back, I tested myself. I kind of started realizing the deck isn't as oppressive as people say it is, and there's actually been some promos even coming out recently that helps certain nations slash clans kind of deal with Narukami. However, I have noticed that Narukami, if played against correctly, it's actually a very beautiful deck, right? So maybe it doesn't really need that hit as desperately. I think there's kind of like a consistency balance. You know, it's just a very consistent deck. It's very good to take. It's not very hard to pilot. So overall, those things combined make the deck easier to want to take versus other decks that require more piloting, more stuff to do. But alas, I'll leave that to the floor. Personally, I don't think anything needs to get hit, and if something does need to get hit, I definitely think that's more of a like next year type of thing. I think next year after Worlds would be a good time to start thinking about maybe what Premium needs and doesn't need. Now let's go over to V. V is kind of like V is tough. V is very tough right now. I feel like there's a lot of very consistent decks, and then there's like the top dog deck, which is obviously Steam Maidens. It is no surprise that Steam Maidens is currently dominating the format. It's actually dominating the format insanely hard. It has the most tops of the season so far. It also has the most tops in top 4. Just in general, has the most tops overall. It's been dominating very heavily from BCS to BCS. There's a couple anomalies here and there, but overall it's been a very aggressive deck. You could argue that there are a couple ways to beat it. There's some certain interactions you can do. There's certain decks you can even play. A good example is actually the reverse chaos deck, it's pretty much the one that forces your opponent, the one that walks Glendios. I think his name is Glendios, but there's that deck that actually directly counters Steam Maidens, but the issue with that deck is that it loses to Excel decks. It has a good matchup with the Force and Protect decks, but it has a very hard time against Excel decks, since the deck does not go around the Excel markers, it only goes around the 5 main circles. So with that being said, you could bring that kind of deck, but it struggles into other decks. But you know, you have to make that meta call. It's like, do I bring this deck to only being Steam Maidens, or do I bring this deck and, you know, hope I see that but then lose to everything else? So that being said, there's no actual direct counter aside from like early aggro decks, which a good example is Astro Poets and Enigma. Both those decks actually can beat down very quickly main players and take them out before they can do anything, but it doesn't mean that that's the answer. Luard isn't too far behind. Luard can actually kind of push through, you know, 3 force markers a turn, and then you just kind of keep going, and if you survive the late game, you can actually win, but you have to deal with that guard restrict and all that kind of stuff and get through there. Andra's not too far behind, can also deal with Steam Maidens probably very well, but it doesn't fix the issue that's at hand. Is the fact that Steam Maidens is still the best deck to take. It's the best deck over every other deck to take. There's actually no reason to take any other deck unless you're trying to play casually. If you want to win, Steam Maidens is usually the answer, and you have to deal with those mirror matches, and you have to just deal with that kind of stuff, and that's just the end. Now, should the deck be hit for upcoming Worlds? And my personal answer is actually yes. And the reason being is Worlds is going to be insanely boring. If all it's because it's going to be either Steam Maiden players or one-shot decks, because there really is no good in between. There's two other consistent decks in my opinion, which is Orange and Luard. They both generate markers pretty fast, but they both outscale Steam Maidens in the late game. If they get there, if they get to that late game. However, they lose to the guard restrict. Both decks lose to the guard restrict pretty aggressively, pretty easily, and unless they're like outscaling or they go first or whatever the case is, they'll usually lose and they'll be behind, and it's really hard to keep up from that point, right? So what Worlds is going to be is just going to be Steam Maidens, right? Rebellion is not a good example, actually. Rebellion can one-shot through very quickly, though again, Rebellion into Maidens is actually pretty rough too, because there's that grade 4 girl that's a 25k shield, which is also insanely high shield value, and that sucks because like it goes around pretty much almost a lot of cards. Like a lot of cards can't handle that 25k shield, which is another problem that the deck just kind of has. It's not searchable at least, so you have to kind of draw into that card, but it doesn't change the fact that that's a lot of shield. It's a 100k shield in the deck essentially. You can go around a lot of weird stuff, and on top of the fact that it also sends cards back to deck, you can also go around guard restricts if you discard a heal, which is also insane if you think about it in other perspectives. So long story short, you kind of have the answer is kind of solved, and because of that, I just think the deck needs a hit. I think the Colossus will be enough. I've talked about to some people even online. Some argue, you know, it's more than just the Colossus hit. The Entrahana needs to go to, or the Cat needs to go, or this needs to go, or that needs to go. And my argument is like, I think starting at the Colossus is a good spot. And while it may not kill the deck, it won't kill the deck. The deck will still exist. The deck will still perform. It won't be like the best deck to take anymore, which is kind of the point of this, right? So the point of this is you kind of have two options. You either kill the deck completely or you half kill the deck. And I think the half kill approach is probably better than the full kill. A lot of people think it'll be an insanely strong deck even after, you know, the Colossus hit. I will agree and disagree with that, because there are other decks that'll be able to easily maintain that and be perfectly fine. Like again, going back to Luard and Anj, those decks will have a lot less issues dealing with Maidens, because even Anj with the 16 card hand that you get, getting Colossus, you kind of just lose. But no longer having Colossus is a thing to worry about. You're constantly deck thinning with Anj. You're deck thinning, you're getting force markers faster than the Steam Maiden player will. You're accelerating at a faster pace than they will. You'll usually win the game even if you go second. That really isn't a problem anymore. But under Colossus is a problem because you can't maintain the hand anymore, and the deck isn't aggressive enough to kill fast enough, so you just lose eventually because of just Colossus. A double Colossus turn will kill an Anj player. One will usually fine, but two will kill you. Luard has a similar issue because they just have a lot of like random grade 3s and grade 1s and all this other crap, right? So they can't deal with the pressure. And then if you think about every other deck, they have that same exact problem, but even more so, because those decks have even less ways to farm, even less ways to deck thin, even less ways to do that, Thavas, etc. They all have that same issue, right? They all fall under that. But Colossus going will fix that problem, because then you have decks like Thavas, Luard, Anj, etc. that won't have to lose their hand, but they can still do what they're doing. So I feel like overall the matchups will be way more even, and the deck won't feel as like, you know, as like shifty, you know, it won't shift the bar as much. So I feel like the Colossus ban will help. It also give room for Steam Maiden players to actually run other cards, which I think will be good. It could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. They can go more hyper build again, like they used to go with Dragon, the Dragon that helps you just go ballistic and all that kind of stuff. So they kind of have a couple options, right? They can do their thing, but overall, you know, I personally believe that the Colossus is a good start. If the deck needs to be hit more, we can hit it more, etc. Entrahana, whatever other else thing will happen. Yeah, I think I talked about V enough. I've been playing in V. I've actually top with Steam Maidens, you know, so, you know, like I've been playing the format for this entire time, and I've been actually testing for future V, like more so than I've been testing for current V, which is weird to say. I'm not competing anymore, so I have the time to do this kind of stuff. So I've actually been testing decks that are going to be the next decks after Maidens gets hit, essentially. So that's what I've been doing. So that's why this is kind of where my standpoint kind of comes from all this, on top of, you know, also competing and topping in the format as well. Let's go over to D. Honestly, D is kind of in a really good spot right now, in my opinion. We're in English meta right now, so we don't have the upgraded Youthberg Tempest stuff yet. So, and we will get it actually pretty soon. I think we've got like a week and a half before it drops, right? So we're about to get it, and you know, it's kind of like, what should anything be touched in D? The answer is definitely no. I don't see why anyone would think otherwise. There's some people that want Gravidia hit or something. It's like, no. Like, even as someone who like hates getting as someone who's experienced getting OT'd by that deck way too many times, I definitely don't think Gravidia needs a hit. A lot of people want like the Orphis ride line out of Gravidia, so people only play the pure one, or you know, whatever it is. I think the deck's fine. Maybe the future won't be fine, but I think the deck's fine. I think there's any other argument for other decks wanting to be touched, really. Obviously there's Youthberg, but we don't have Youthberg yet, so we can't really, you know, touch something that's not really out yet. I also think, and I made a tweet about it, and it kind of, you know, people are kind of like blah 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 on it. I had to like mute it because people are like, oh my god, what do you mean Youthberg isn't that good? Youthberg is actually very strong. It's a very strong deck. It's very consistent. It's more of a consistent deck than it is like an insanely oppressive deck. It also has like straight up draw 2 and all on top of a control deck. I feel like some decks are very harmed by that deck, but I feel like if you're playing like a good deck, you'll notice that Youthberg actually just isn't, it's not Steam Maiden's level is the best way to put it. There's like a level of the deck is good, but it's also semi-fair, and then you have the deck is good and it's also unfair, and any matchup it faces, it just usually wins. And Youthberg is not that. Youthberg is a strong deck, but it does not actually win to every single matchup. There's certain decks that get harmed by it, decks that require pieces or certain things that they need, like things that they don't want bottom deck. To good example of Zorga. I feel like Zorga actually really struggles into Youthberg very heavily, because if they bottom deck the dragon, it's kind of really hard for the Zorga player to get that dragon back, and that dragon is kind of their win con. So like decks like that, decks in that area, I feel like struggle really hard into Youthberg. But other decks that don't really care about that just don't really care. You're also keeping in mind, a bottom decking means that they're not retiring, they're bottom decking, which actually helps deck out win cons. It's something that I feel like some people talk about it, but they don't go into depth. There's this concept of like deck out win con in D. It's actually pretty common to deck people out, and especially if you're playing Youthberg, you can actually deck Youthberg out. It's actually very easy to do. And if you're playing decks and if Youthberg helps you bottom deck your cards, it actually increases chances of you not decking out and the Youthberg player decking out, because they're constantly going through their deck really fast. By the way, they can also stack their bottom cards, but you can also, like, you know, get your PGs ready for those. Like it's actually very interesting. But you know, long story short, you can play for the long game and just deck them out too. So there's definitely quite a few ways that you can deal with Youthberg. Not to say the deck's not good. The deck is definitely really good. I think the consistency is what makes it so good. It's kind of like a well-oiled machine. You have all your cards, they do their thing, they replenish themselves, and the deck just keeps going. It doesn't really brick, it just keeps going. And I think because it just keeps going is what people are very scared of. But anyway, long story short, are there any hits in D? The answer is no. So TLDR, no hits in P, no hits in D. Steam Main's kind of gotta go. Sorry, Steam Main players and Gear Chronicle players. There is clearly an issue. It's very obvious. It's all over. There's data everywhere. There's a very obvious outlier. It's gotta go. Premium, some people are arguing Kami. Maybe, maybe not. That's a TLDR. Other than that, guys, that's my little thing. If you need some information about, you know, all this information I have is usually going through like different version of data. You can check out Fuzzy Paradox. Fuzzy Paradox has all the charts for every single season so far. You can check him out for all this information to see kind of what's going on. Some people have like data analysis. Mel and Matt did a couple of data analysis. So you can go over to Kai's channel too. Kai has a little like graphic of all the tops of this year going on his video right there. So if you really want to see more data of what I just discussed, like everything I just said is literally straight from data that I've seen, data that I've acknowledged, data that I looked at. I've talked about some of this data in the past, especially for V. I've talked about Mel and Matt's post on you know what the biggest tops right now are, and you know, so just letting you know, all this information is coming from data that I've seen, and you can also look at it too. So there's just kind of a couple shout outs there for you. And other than that, guys, I hope you guys are enjoying the format. As always, I love Vanguard. I'm not here to start like, you know, 20 different arguments. I'm just here explaining kind of what's going on, giving you the information of what's going on, and sort of how I feel about it. That's really just how it is. And as someone who plays all three formats, I love them all in their own way, and I'm very excited to keep playing the game, and I hope everyone's having fun and playing the game with me as well. Other than that, guys, peace out. That's you guys in the future video. Bye.